The Cloverfield Paradox, a new Netflix film based in space, thriller, horror kind of thing. Generally speaking, I like these sort of films, so let's see what we've got here. Now, just to give a quick bit of background, basically the situation is that Earth is, and we're sort of there, but it's a bit ahead of us, tied in a variety of sort of conflicts or pending conflicts between various nations because of the lack of power or energy or fuel sources. And so what's going on is there's this space station in space orbiting Earth, and they're doing experiments there, on an experiment specifically, to get the particle accelerator they have on board this ship working, which in essence would create a constant, or at least supply enough fuel or power for Earth to resolve a lot of its conflicts and a variety of other issues as well, obviously. And so that's sort of the background of what's going on. And we follow our 8 crewmen on board this ship to see basically if it was going to be working. They've been stuck up there for about 2 years now, and I think they've tried 40 or 70 odd, I can't quite remember, but a lot of attempts, and it's just not working. And they're sort of giving it, I'm not sure if it's one last go, but another go. And they actually get it to sort of power up this time, and seems to work, but it causes an overload, as it's described on the warning screen, and quite a few things go wrong. And this is where the film then starts to sort of go into the direction of what it wants to be, or the variety of directions. It's not a confused film in terms of the sense of where it's sort of trying to get to, but there's a whole lot of sort of random things that go on which fits in with it, because it's all about sort of parallel worlds or parallel dimensions and just sort of kind of random things going on, and there is quite a lot of that. But for me, reasonably entertaining. I recently watched, well, I say recently, a little while ago I watched Life, the movie, and I quite enjoyed that. This was quite similar to that in many respects, but probably didn't have quite the same budget. Certainly doesn't have the same sort of list of A-list celebrities or Hollywood stars that Life did. But still, there's a good range of actors, and quite a few that I sort of recognise from sort of TV series within the UK, actually, to be honest, rather than anything else. But yeah, generally the cast and everything were pretty good, and the script and everything in general I thought was pretty good. I know I haven't looked at any reviews specifically, but I am aware that this is getting kicked a little bit. That seems a little bit harsh. I don't think it's the script and everything and the acting and all of that. There's no major problems with it. It all runs along quite nicely. And as I sort of noted when I was watching it, I was more or less entertained with this film from start to finish, but not quite to finish, to be fair. The last maybe 15 minutes, as with a lot of movies, unfortunately, lost its way a little bit. And that was a little bit of a shame, to be honest. There's just a few different sort of things going on. I'm trying to avoid putting any real spoilers in this. But there's just a few different things that are going on that just seemed a little bit silly. I could understand it, but it all just sort of played out a bit stupid. And in terms of the sort of the science and stuff within this film, I'm no physicist or anything like that, but I could see that there were a few things where they're sort of talking science and playing science, and that kind of made sense. But there was other bits where it sort of seemed to be slightly overlooked in terms of maybe sort of gravity and the whole expanse of space. That is a slight issue when you're doing something that is sort of quite sciencey and talking about sort of scientific theories and stuff, and dropping the Higgs boson name in there and stuff. So you are claiming to know a bit about physics, but it did look a little bit like maybe they didn't quite know as much about physics when making this film as possibly the script suggested. But that could just be that I don't know about physics enough instead. In regards to the sort of the horror element of the film and stuff, there were some sort of fairly graphic bits in it and things like that. I'm not someone who's totally into that, but it all worked really well for me. The death scenes were pretty good. There were some quite sort of bizarre things going on, but the way in which this film sort of explained itself and what was going on with these kind of sort of, with the Cloverfield Paradox, or the Paradox, meant that kind of anything goes. And they didn't go too ridiculous, maybe a couple of bits to an extent, but on the whole I actually sort of quite enjoyed it, and it felt grounded enough, bearing in mind we're on a spaceship and weird stuff's going on with dimensional worlds and universes and stuff like that. The other thing to mention, and this is the bit where I'm at a loss, not so much specifically with this film, although it is part of this film, but just this whole concept, Cloverfield. I watched the original film and I didn't mind it, to be honest. I know quite a few people didn't really like it, but I sort of thought it was good enough and everything. It wasn't any sort of major film, maybe a 6 or a 7 out of 10 or something like that. But this idea of this sort of series or franchise of Cloverfield, this has Cloverfield in the title, and yes, there is a little bit, very little bit, of the monster in it, and maybe a little bit of shadow, and these are sort of some of the sort of flashbacks we see to Earth. But that whole bit, to me, didn't really make much sense. I mean, like I said, I'm trying to avoid spoilers too much, but just briefly, there seems to, the way they explain it at one point is there seems to be sort of 2 dimensions, and things are going from sort of one to another a little bit. I don't know where these monsters came from, or monster came from then, because it didn't seem to be that was coming from the other dimension. I don't understand that. It seemed to be just a complete nonsensical reason to put this monster in the film. There's no reason for it. It's never on the ship or anything like that. It's purely on Earth, or there on Earth if there's a variety of monsters. I find this odd, and I know there's is it 10 Cloverfield Lane as well. I didn't realise that. I know it has Cloverfield in the title, but I'm surprised to hear that is part of it as well. So there's kind of a trilogy. This is odd. I mean, any film whatsoever could have Cloverfield put in the title if this justifies trying to make out that this is linked to those films, because it's not. I mean, any film could stupidly be pushed in here. I mean, it really is that silly. You know, it could be that you killed Jaws and then that unlocked the monster to arrive. You know, nonsense like that. That's what we did with this. I don't know what's going on with this Cloverfield thing. Maybe people can fill me in with this, because I'm at a complete loss. I wasn't aware that we've now got arguably a trilogy. It's just odd. So, yeah, if anyone can explain to me what the hell's going on, and who thinks this is like some sort of way of working a franchise. Is this to compete with like Marvel or something? What? I don't get it. So, yeah, that part of the film, I'm at a loss, to be honest. And bringing me into my conclusion for the film, I'm not sure whether I should let that weigh up at all on it. In terms of the sort of the imagery, I didn't touch on the CGI and stuff. CGI and stuff actually was pretty good. The ship looked pretty good and everything. There wasn't really any holes in that or anything from what I could tell. I enjoyed that. I mean, it does need to stack up these days if you're going to do a sort of space sci-fi film. It's got to look good with the CGI, and this doesn't fail at that. Like I said before, the acting I thought was pretty good. The script I thought was reasonably good as well, and the sort of the horror side of it all worked pretty well. It didn't stand out ahead of any other film I've seen like this. It wasn't better than any others at any of these things, but it was perfectly good throughout. And for that reason, I think I will give it a 7 out of 10, and I'll ignore the whole Cloverfield bit, because otherwise that would drag it to a 6. But it seems unfair, because as far as I'm aware, this film was made originally, I think it might have been called The God Particle, to be a standalone film, and for whatever reason it got Cloverfield slapped on at the end. I'm not sure why, but I'll forgive it for that.